Hi, I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial at the GEOINT 2024 Symposium in Orlando, Florida. I have the pleasure of talking with Bryan Fite at Meshco. How you doing, Bryan?
Great, Adam. Thanks for asking.
Sweet. Okay. So, you're here, and we're talking in this segment to you have a unique project you've been working on, right?
Yes, supply chain smoking.
But before you get into that, let's talk a little bit about yourself first and how you got involved with the industry.
Well, I've been in cybers for a long time. This is my first GEOINT conference, and it's basically because of the research we've been doing. I started out as a civilian in the Cold War, and I often say I miss the Cold War. I know,
Okay.
I know. Single adversary, unlimited budget.
You may not have to wait long. I mean,
Oh, unfortunately. But so that research, I've just been out there being a security practitioner for many years, and I've seen a lot of things. And part of my practice was to be able to explain to stakeholders, typically executives, who don't want to hear the technical pieces, they just want answers, to explain complicated things in an easy way. And I found that visualization is the easiest way to do that. And so building models to build threat catalogs or to identify attack paths with the main goal of being to remove those attack paths or the ability for them to be exploited. And so the recent knowledge of this is information, signal information. It's everywhere. And so we work with a lot of open source data feeds to create very rich models that allow us to do digital twins, what ifs, scenario planning in hopes of predicting the next Black Swan event. And I might even go on out on a limb here and say, I think that cyber and physical domains coming together, we are developing a maturity level that gives us the capabilities to actually mathematically reduce the likelihood of attack and to mathematically eliminate unknown Black Swan events.
okay.
Now, that doesn't mean people will invest in preparing for them, but at least they shouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Awesome. So circling that back to what you're doing here, and I don't want you to give away your whole premise to the with your introduction. On the other hand, let's talk about that for a minute, right? So, what does that mean? How hard? How serious is the threat that you're talking about? And what are you doing to convince people that this is something to pay attention to?
Okay, so yes, we have this concept of point of origin hacking, POO. And that's not the fuzzy bear from your childhood. These are the things that if a motivated adversary spends enough time and money, they will eventually develop a capability to exploit that vulnerability. And I joke sometimes, I'm not a bug hunter. I like architectural flaws because they can't be patched. And so what we're really trying to do is to raise awareness, create digital twins that can allow stakeholders to see something that's theoretical today, but when they're building the future legacy systems of tomorrow, that they can do it right and not have to worry about some of those architectural flaws.
Okay, can you talk to me a little bit more about that? What's your solution to this?
Okay, so one this is very much a cyber oriented, but extortion and ransomware. That's a fraud that's being committed a lot, and people see it in the news. And in fact, it's now an obligation for publicly traded companies to disclose if they've had a ransomware attack.
Okay.
So let's go back 10 years. That really wasn't happening a lot. It was almost a theoretical vulnerability. And there'd be people who would get extorted or some ransomware, but it wasn't mainstream like it is now.
Well, you just said something interesting.
Yes.
You said that it's required to make that public now, right?
Yes, if you're publicly traded, there's recent SEC regulations that require it.
So do you feel like before that was in place, it happened all the time, it just wasn't reported?
No, I think it's trending the same way, and the reason now it's obligated is because it is so prevalent.
Okay.
But historically, when you would have an event like that, the information security team wasn't the first one called. It was really the lawyers and marketing. And now lawyers are still there, the marketing is still there, but operational piece, other stakeholders within the organization are also there. And these aren't unique events. Before this, they would not have a playbook for an event like that because it never happened to them. They probably never saw a postmortem of it happening to somebody else. But now you can get cyber insurance.
Okay.
Now the problem with that is so many people have had to collect on that cyber insurance that they can't get reinsured now. So the insurance companies, part of their due diligence is to make sure that you acknowledge that it's a potential bad thing to happen, put it in your threat catalog or your risk register, and that you're actually taking taking action to keep it from happening. And so that you would at least have a plan. If we get attacked with a ransomware, what are we going to do? Do we pay? What's your company's policy on extortion? And if you're going to pay, do you have Bitcoin? Because that's typically the ransom is required in crypto.
So paying is still a viable option?
Apparently it is, because the insurance companies will actually negotiate on your behalf. Again, I've never...
I feel like we a little stirred off
Yes.
topic here, and I thank you for the caveat. Obviously, we're learning a little bit more about the impact here, but let's go once again, circle back to your presentation, your briefing, your solution to this.
Supply chain smoking.
Exactly. So let's talk to me more about that.
Right. So supply chain smoking. Smoking is bad, and everybody knows about supply chains now. So we put them together because it's the proverbial butterfly flapping its wing in one part of the world can actually turn off a pumping station somewhere else. So that's the premise, is that, that you don't have to come straight at an attack via cyber. There could be a kinetic attack and a simultaneous cyber attack, or some type of human disruption, or a bridge falls down, or a trail derails. So the idea is to be able to model these very complex events that could just be happenstance or could be planned. So we called it engineering failure that leads to cascading failure, or engineering to avoid cascading failures. And so by creating these large models with very complex relationships, we can take some theoretical things that we might see in a science fiction movie or happens to somebody else and say, could that happen to us? And then very quickly ask that question of the model and see if you can get from point A to point B. Now, the challenges we had, this is a computer science problem because there's so many different ways these objects can react with each other or interact with each other. And so we've had to learn a lot of new technologies in the last couple of years. Because before we could take a single scenario, maybe the simultaneous denial of service attack, meaning, okay, we're protected from one attack, but what happens if they happen 2 or 3? What if they hit us high and hit us low at the same time? So those models we developed to actually do the what if, the tabletop exercises, but it was very labor intensive. We knew they weren't very complete. So our idea was, hey, can we use open source data signals that are freely available to everybody, create much more granular, detailed models, and then use either machine learning or node database, graph databases to show the interactions. Because ultimately, we want to be able to present these to stakeholders, these use cases to stakeholders or executives or people, and visually show them how it could happen.
Well, were you able to do that? Are you able to do
that?
Well,
we are able to do it.
Okay.
We're doing it, automating it is now the big challenge. We've taken our processes, our first big challenge is we created what we thought was a very simple graph database that had 30,000 nodes of ASNs, which is layer 3, how everything gets routed around the world. And you couldn't use it at all because every time you tried to change it or change a view, it would take forever to reconverge. So we've become pretty expert at these graph databases, and we can do pre-processing on the server side. We can actually break it's called sharding. We break the databases up because it doesn't scale like normal compute. It's horizontal. And that's the challenge that that we've overcome, and now we're getting ready to build bigger models.
So that's your next step, is naturally to scale up
Yes.
your solution.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So, do you have, what are your plans to further operationalize what you have?
Well, it's to get it out there and share it with people, see if make sure that it passed the sniff test, as it were, and use it in our practice when we're doing risk assessment and attack path modeling and engaging with stakeholders. So our goal is to, this research will be published under Creative Commons and open source as much as we can.
That's even more good news.
And then we just, give us your data, give us your use cases, and let us plug it in to see if it can identify hidden dependencies, because that's really what we're worried about. Everybody who manages assets, they know what they manage. It's the invisible things that aren't managed, or the hidden interdependencies. The one that you don't see is the one that always gets you.
Oh, yeah.
So we want to eliminate those hidden dependencies and make them visible, so stakeholders could decide, make their own risk decisions.
Well, thank you very much. So as we wrap up, do you have any final words you'd like to relay to our audience in terms of the important work that you're doing and the developments that you're working towards?
Right. So don't panic. It's inevitable. So plan accordingly.
Oh boy, plan for failure.
Inject failure. Do it before somebody else does, and then you'll have the right way to respond.
There you go. There's a good answer. Well, I appreciate your time with us, and thank you for the overview about your project related to that you so kindly call chain smoking, and we'll enjoy the conversation. And this is a great venue to hopefully get some traction here.
Oh, I'm going to hit the floor. I can't wait to talk to some of these other researchers.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial. We will talk to everybody next time.